do I love him or is this lust? So today's February 13th, and it's when I launched Through Ashlyn's Lens, the first episode, right? Well, with the first episode being the day before Valentine's Day, I wanted it to be something about relationships. And plus, the fact that you tuned into this moment means that we have started a new relationship. You're getting to know me in a new way. I'm being more transparent by doing this in the first place. And so let's just really have a conversation about relationship. With that in mind though, the title of it is, do I love him or is this lust? Now, my graphic designer asked me, he said, so look, is this just for women or is this for men and women? Like, who are you targeting? And so although it says him, the H in him is actually capital because I'm talking about Jesus mainly, but also we're going to look at different perspectives of relationships, whether it be human to human, spiritually, or even an animal and a person, right? Okay, so let's get into it. My first question is, what is lust? Okay, we talked about do I love him or is this lust, then I need to know what exactly counts as lust. Now, when I looked up the definition for lust, it mostly talked about sexual encounters. Well, did you also know that lust doesn't have to just be about sex? Did you know that lust is also defined as having a strong feeling or to feel a strong desire for something? Now, okay, when I got in a relationship with God, I had a strong desire to be saved. I wanted to know. I was told that if you don't get baptized, if you don't love God for real, you won't get to heaven. So my desire was really to get into heaven. That's why I got in a relationship with him. That means I lusted after what God could give me, and that was access to heaven. Okay? Well, here's the thing about that though. Once we get into the relationship with God, even if it's lusting for something that he gives us access to, guess what else? It also has to turn into love. And that's really the whole point of this podcast in the first place is, well, this first episode is to talk about how we can take lust and turn it into love. Or even let's visit the point of if it can happen. So with that first question is, we talked about what lust is, right? It's having to feel a strong desire or to pretty much feel a strong desire for something, right? And so then that next question I would ask would have been, can lust actually lead to love? So if I get in a relationship, if I'm trying to date someone, the first initial contact or the idea comes into mind because I'm probably attracted to them physically. Now, if I'm not first attracted to them physically, then I must have heard them speaking or something that sparks my interest academically or as far as intelligence goes, right? Probably if I've decided to date someone, it's because I think they are handsome and they're intelligent. Those are pretty much the two things. And then of course salvation comes into play, but we'll get to that later, right? I don't lust after them just because they're saved. But they do have to at least be attractive to me. They may not be Denzel Washington if you think he's handsome, but definitely, somebody that I think looks great, right? So, okay, you decide to date someone because you think they look handsome or beautiful, depending on, then you may be attracted to intelligence. You may have met someone who looks, I don't want to say look horrible, but who you're not really attracted to physically, but you're attracted to in other ways. There are other things that we live in a world now where different people are attracted to a whole bunch of different things, which they were back then, but it's more in the open now, right? So, first of all, it's the fact that you lusted for whatever you saw. Right? And I think that's okay. The problem becomes when you lust for something and it never turns into love. Right? Let's say I married my high school sweetheart. I knew without a shadow of a doubt this was going to be my husband because he's smart, I'm smart, we're going to make a great match, we're going to get married, and we will raise our kids amazingly because we have endured a whole lot together growing up and we've been there for each other, right? And I know. Plus, we've been abstinent. And I know that once we're married, we can engage in relations together and not have to worry about sin. Well, what if something happens to me where I'm no longer able to engage in sexual relations with my husband? Do we have enough love that can withstand that trauma or that specific thing, or the idea that he can't have relations with me? Is there enough love for him to remain in the marriage with me? Or was it just the lust for the sexual activity? will it stop there? Could he not control his urges after that point? Right? So think about that. Now let's look at it from another perspective. What about God? What if God has been giving me everything I need? He's been my protector, my provider. He has blessed me to wake up every day, right? But then today he decides, look, Ashlyn, I've done enough for you. From this point forward, the only thing I'm going to do for you is wake you up. You have to provide your own, provide for yourself. You have to get out and grind. I'm not saying that you're not grinding, with him allowing the grind to be available, but he literally says the only thing I'm going to do for you, Ashlyn, is wake you up. Could you love God enough to still wake up tomorrow? Or could I really wake up tomorrow and still love God even though all he's doing is waking me up? Could I see that as blessing enough, right, to remain in relationship with him? Or is this the point where I curse God and die and go to hell and spend the rest of my whatever time available in eternity with Satan, right? So think about that. Think about why you got into a relationship with God, or why you got into a relationship with your significant other, or your husband and wife, or even friendships. Why are you in a relationship with your friend? Are you lusting after the connections that they make available? Is it because your friend is high priority? They have an amazing job and they can get you into the best parties or something, or they can introduce you to the right people. Am I in a relationship with somebody because they can help me better my podcast? Right? Well, what if they lose those connections? What if tomorrow, I keep saying tomorrow, but it is tomorrow. What if tomorrow we wake up and that person no longer has their job, or they no longer have their camera, or they no longer can make flyers, or they just no longer, they've been cut off completely? Am I still going to be able to be in relationship with that person? Did I just lust after what they gave me access to? Or do I actually love them? Because when it's love, you know what happens when you get in love, even if it's the wrong person. When you really love somebody, and even if they're bad for you, you're still like, well, you know what? Okay, this isn't working out. They can't do this for me, but they still do this for me. I can still stay in this. Think about all those women and men that end up in relationships with somebody and even married to them, or just end up loving them. If it's love, if love is a factor, sometimes you are okay with some things happening. Sometimes you just accept some stuff. So that's the thing. Is it love or is it lust? What is it? What's going on here? Look at I looked at, so of course this is Christian based podcast, right? So I can use a little scripture. If that's okay, let's look at 1 John 4 verses 16 through 19 in the Message Bible. It breaks it a little down for me. It says, don't love the world's ways. Don't love the world's goods. Love of the world squeezes out love for the Father. Practically everything that goes on in the world. What are those things? Wanting your own way. Wanting everything for yourself. Wanting to appear important. It has nothing to do with the Father. It just isolates you from Him. The world and all its wanting is on the way out. But whoever does what God wants is set up for eternity. Right? Let's think about, first of all, that wanting to appear important. I was one that fell for that. Oh my God. That's why I wasn't transparent in the beginning, because I didn't want you to know the truth. So I figured out, if I don't share everything with people, which I turned and used it in, well, really not native, but I took it too far. So I was thinking, okay, the saying, okay, if I keep my mouth quiet, you don't know what I know, and you don't know what I don't know neither. So I just would be silent, right? You wouldn't hear my voice for real. I would listen to you and I would observe. And then when it was absolutely time and I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was going to be right, then I'd share. Well, that kind of messed me up in some areas, because now look, I'm just now starting a podcast. I'm just now really sharing my points of view. But you know, God can always take things and use it for good, right? Well, how about this? What is our example of love? We know what lust is. We know how it is to get prideful and arrogant even, right? But what is our example of love? In 1 John 4 verses 16 through 19, here's what it says. It says, God is love. First of all, that's it right there. God is love. If we want to really build a relationship with God, then guess what? He gave us the Bible for us to sit down to learn Him. There has to be a point in your relationship with God that you're no longer just after what He can provide for you, but that instead you learn, okay, what makes God mad? What makes God sad? What negatively affects God? And what positively affects Him? What will make Him smile? I remember when I first accepted my call to preach, and we announced it before the church. I remember taking to Facebook, and I remember saying, you know what? It felt like in that moment I could see God. Of course, not visibly see Him, but I felt as though He was in the back of that church saying, you know, like smiling at me, saying, okay, look, that was a good thing you did. I'm proud of you. Really. I didn't have a father figure growing up, so that was the only access I could dream of. That's the only thing I could imagine that God could have been doing. Look, I finally made my father proud. The father, you know, that has been around since I was little. God Himself. I feel as though when I accepted my call to preach, I made Him proud. Well, what other things makes God proud? What other things makes Him pleased? Have you ever thought about that? And if you have, what things have you found, and how often do you do them? That's what we do when we're in relationships. I know when I'm dating someone, one of the things I want to know is, okay, what do you like? What are the things that you like? What's your preference when it comes to certain things, right? Also, I want to know what are your pet peeves, so that at least I won't be getting on your nerves unless it's something that I just have to do. With that in mind though, we were saying our example of love is 1 John 4:16 through 19. And I stopped at God is love because that's important. Once you get to know God, you really get to know what love is. It also says, when we take up permanent residence in a life of love, we live in God, and God lives in us. This way, love has the run of the house, becomes at home and mature in us. Can we let love mature in us for a moment, you know? Also, it says, so that we're free of worry on Judgment Day. Let me tell you, that's a lot right there, because I've been trying to, just throughout life, knowing that there's going to be a judgment day, I've been wondering, so like, is God going to let me give my, I'm a person that always has a reason for doing things. So if I do wrong, I have a reason for doing it. It's just, you know, if you want to ask me, I'll share it, right? Well, I've been wondering on Judgment Day, is God going to let me say, look now, I know this is not what you like, but I really needed to do that. I mean, I was in this position, right? I don't really think He's going to give us the opportunity, which is why here it says, let love mature in us so that we're free of worry on Judgment Day. Our standing in the world is identical with Christ. There is no room in love for fear. Well-formed love banishes fear. Since fear is crippling, a fearful life, fear of death, fear of judgment, is one not yet fully formed in love. So that says a lot. That you're telling me that if I love somebody, I can't have fear anywhere in the mix? That's exactly what the scripture just said. So that means if I love God, I can't be afraid that one day He's going to, I can't be afraid of anything. Well, think about it. This is something I learned a long time ago. I was told, or I heard someone talking about how if I'm going to be in a relationship with somebody, I would prefer to give my all. To give everything, to invest myself definitely in it completely, instead of holding back to a piece. Holding back a piece. Once we've really decided we're going to be monogamous and just the two of us and we're not dating anybody else. If I decide that with you, then I'm going to invest myself in it. Instead of, you know, sometimes you put up walls and say, look, okay, I'm going to give you this little portion of me, and then once you prove yourself, I'll give you another portion. I feel as though if we invest ourselves completely, if it works, it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, then guess what? I know I did my part because I was a part of it. I was in it. I was all the way in it. I was fully sold, right? But then if it does work, then it has a better chance of working because I didn't hold out on pieces. I would hate to get in a relationship and then it doesn't work out because they feel like they didn't know all of me, or they didn't have access to all parts of me. Now, of course, that does not mean I'm about to go jump into bed with somebody because I'm abstinent and all that, right? But just saying, it's better to invest fully. Well, most of the time what keeps us from investing fully is fear. We're afraid that something's going to happen, or that they're going to go out and cheat on us, or, you know, anything. And those things are very real. They can happen. But we have to remove fear, right? Just like my relationship with God, I can trust God completely because I don't have to be afraid of him. I know who God is. I know who he is to me. I know who he can be to me. I know who I'm supposed to be to him. And so I shouldn't be afraid that God's going to remove himself from me one day. I don't have to be afraid of that because I have spent intimate time with him, and even in his word, learning what is okay and what's not okay, right? That's what we're talking about, right? Is it lust or is it love? If you're not just lusting after what God can do, that's when you have to be afraid, because you know there's no real love there anyway. So he can wake up tomorrow. I mean, if you don't really build relationship with God and there's no love really there, then how do you know you have been granted access to heaven? That's where you're afraid, because you're afraid that, oh, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, especially living in sin. I know doing something sinful makes me afraid every moment, because I'm like, oh Lord, I don't know if I'm gonna get a chance to get it right. Well, another thing I would look at is, so look, what can we do? I have gotten to a place, look, we've been talking all this time. Now I need to know, look, I keep saying look, but you get what I'm saying. I've been looking at myself through this lens the whole time since coming up with this topic. Do I really love God, or has this been lust the whole time? There are some aspects where it really has been lust. And so I had to come sit down and answer this question. What do I do to readjust myself from lust to love? What can I do? What can I tweak? How can I move? Well, first thing, let's talk about how we need to shift our focus. Let's take the focus off of what can you give me. First of all, it's not just about me. Neither. I have to take into account the person in which I am in a relationship with. If I'm talking about a significant other, look, it's not just about what makes me happy. What makes you happy? What do I do that makes you not happy? I have conversations with my friends all the time. I was just talking to one of them today, and we were talking about a new show that she's watching. And in the show, there's a character. She had just made a comment about how this character was pretty rude to another character. And then she was like, you know what? You actually remind me of this character. And so I was like, wait, what does that mean? And so we had a conversation. Of course, she was not saying that I was rude. She was just saying that I could be stern sometimes, which could count as rude sometimes, depending on how it goes. She wasn't saying that about me. It was really great. We had a conversation about it. We communicated, right? So have a conversation with your friends, your significant others. Have a conversation saying, look, what do I do that really bothers you? If it's not something that affects you morally, that you would have to shift, then consider shifting or not. That's when you have to make real decisions about, okay, this is just who I am. And just saying, okay, that's how I've always been, does not give you the opportunity. It does not give you, it is not a positive thing all the time. Just like being in a professional environment and this person curses me out. And they say, oh, that's him. He been doing that all his life. Well, I'm sorry, you about to change it, because that's not acceptable. Especially now if we're talking about being professional, right? So I'm just saying, it's time to start looking at our focus. Is our focus just on ourselves, or does it include other people? Now, of course, you are supposed to take care of yourself too in certain aspects to make sure people are not being demeaning to you in any way. But also that means you don't get to be demeaning to others. There's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So that means if I treat you horribly, that means I must want you to treat me back horribly. Guess what? Stop it. Nobody gets to treat anybody horrible. It's time to readjust things. Especially in this age where we're working on our mental health and stuff. It's not cool to go out and traumatize somebody just because you have the ability or you're the boss or whatever. Right? So let's shift our focus. Next. What is next? Let's talk about perspective. So, are you looking at things always from well, I'm an only child, I get to do what I want? I'm sorry, if you're 50 and 60 years old, you don't get to count as an only child anymore. You are a grown adult, whether you got kids or not. It's time to change that perspective. Look, you are a grown adult in the world. What are you going to do to change yourself? It's time to grow up. And that's just not just with that, but that was a really good example. I feel like you can tell me if you agree or not. Please comment if you do. Okay. Also, let's talk about need. So, is my need causing me to lust after connection with you? Is my need causing me to love you? Do I love you just because I'm in need? I work in HIV prevention. I'm an education specialist, right? One thing we talk about is sometimes people behave in a certain risky behavior because of the need that's presented before them. They'll love you. Let's say we're in jail. Well, somebody who may not engage in certain activity could change their view or their perspective or their focus once they're in need. They'll act like they love you and then get out in the streets and who are you? I've never seen you a day in my life. Right? There are certain people that, like kids, run away from home. When they run away from home, they find out, oh wait, I don't have anything to get through life right now. So they'll behave a certain way because they're in need. There's somebody who is probably out being a thief right now. Not because they are thieves, but just because they need food. Or they have a child that needs diapers, right? Sometimes things shift based on need. But if something is a certain way just because you need it, right? If I love God just because I need Him to heal my family member that I'm close to and I don't know how I'm going to live without. Well, if something happens where that family member gets healed on this side, on earth, then I may change my relationship with God. Or what if this family member passes or, transcends, right? If this person is no longer here on earth, does that mean that I no longer have a relationship with God because He didn't do what I wanted Him to do? That means I was just lusting after what He gave me access to because I needed Him right then. What about when you don't need Him? What about when God blows this podcast up and the whole world is viewing it and everybody buys the t-shirt I have on? Then will I still love God enough to still talk about Him here? Was I just lusting for the ability to have greater access to people? Or do I just love God and I'm just going to share it with the world no matter if one or two people listen or watch? Or it just depends. Is it about my need? Am I only lusting because of Him, after Him because of my need? Am I only looking at it from the perspective of how it greatly affects me? Am I only focusing in on myself? Am I isolating? The Bible said that if I'm only looking out for my own view, then I'm isolating myself from God. I think the whole point of this thing is to get to a better relationship with God, to spend more intimate time with Him, to get to know Him in a new way. And not just Him, but also what we do on the earth also affects Him. What is the greatest, the commandment? The greatest commandment of them all is love. If I say that I love God, I have to also love my brother and sister. So we can love God, but if we love Him and treat our people down here horribly, then guess what? That means I don't really love Him for real, because I should look at you and see a portion of God in you, whether you see it or not, right? That means I have to also treat God right by treating you properly. So the purpose of this episode was just to get your mind going. Please take a moment to comment, to let me know what you think. Did this help you in any way? If so, let me know. Inbox me, DM me, comment please, and share if you do like it. For updates, please connect with us on Instagram and Facebook and even YouTube at Through Ashlyn's Lens. Okay. Also, for the ability to watch or listen to the full broadcast or the full episode, please connect with us on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, even Facebook and Instagram TV. Thank you so much.